Mr. Sergeant of Arms, invite the members into the chamber and close the doors. I hereby declare the House of Representatives of the 113th General Assembly of the State of Tennessee now in session. Will the members please stand? Will the visitors in the gallery please stand and remain standing through the Pledge of Allegiance? Representative Bain will introduce the chaplain of the day. Representative Bain, you are recognized.
Thank you so much. I'm so elated to be here and to do this today. Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. So a little bit about me. I was baptized Congregationalist. I was raised Lutheran. I was confirmed Methodist and sang in church choir for basically my entire existence until college. My mom grew up a Jehovah's Witness, and my dad was raised as a Missouri Synod. And although religion comes in all shapes and colors, I've always held the following close to my heart from Matthew 7:12. In everything, do to others what you would have them do to you. So with that, I'd like to introduce my constituent and friend, Chaplain Darren Johnson of United Church of Christ. Darren works with a hospice serving Middle Tennessee, and throughout her career, she has advocated persistently for keeping the voices of patients and their communities of care central to their journey. It is my honor and privilege to introduce Chaplain Darren Johnson.
All that follows is a prayer. Perusing the items on the agenda today, I wondered what prayerful purchase one might grab onto, what to say that the resolutions honoring auctioneers, veterans, coaches, judges, citizen leaders don't already say whereas and well. However, as I read about their victories and challenges, their setbacks and ways of perseverance, it came to me. This is the work, isn't it? To be clear, I understand such work is not contained only in consent agenda resolutions. Many will never be recognized in this way. Yet all still have voices, have lives, each with their own inherent value. As you work to find ways for these many lives to speak, it is possible, maybe even inevitable, that they will not always blend harmoniously with each other. All will seem cacophony and chaos. Yet it may be so only to our ears. I'm reminded of a choral setting of the Genesis creation story. And when it comes to the part where God said, "Let there be light," and there was, the composer tells each person to pick their own note and hold it as they sing the phrase, "Out of such noisy chaos, creation comes." From childhood lessons and their morals, my own mother repeated many times that solutions most often come from more voices, not fewer. To song and hymn calling us all forward, "Come, fathers and mothers, come, sisters and brothers, come." We're reminded to speak in our own voice, to sing in our own tongues. Bring many names, beautiful and good, and to do so boldly enough that all might hear. Lift every voice and sing till earth and heaven ring. As you move into this session, this week of work, and the rest of this assembly, may you do so resolved to honor them in the fullness of their and of our divinely differing lives. Let us pray. God of one and many, God of small, still voice and prophetic thunder, speak so that all might hear your voice. Speak through the work of those called to this house, and speak through the voices of all they are sent here to represent. In honoring those who have helped their communities, hear their voices, hear our prayer. In working to offer shelter, food, healthcare, education for all who need these essentials, hear their voices and hear our prayer. In working to assure this state offers welcome, safety, and foundations from which we can all flourish, whoever, wherever, and however we are in the world, hear their voices and hear our prayer. In attending to each other, in attending to those who send us to this space, in attending to you, O God, we ask you help us release all that would keep us from hearing and giving voice to the lives of all affected by the work of this house and assembly. We ask all this. We thank you for all this in your name. And let the people say, amen.
Representative Bain will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Roll call.
Mr. Clerk, take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 70 members present.
Let the journal reflect Representatives Freeman and Kiesling are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Welcoming and honoring.
Welcome and honoring Representative Wright. You're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. My fellow members, it's a solemn moment that I stand to address you this evening. Knox County's 8th District seated Board of Education member, Mike McMillan, passed away this past Friday. Mike was a 13-year member of the Board of Education in Knox County, and prior to that, in a former life, was a Knox County Commission member for 10 years. He was a servant of Knox County. He was a lifelong educator in the Knox County school system. He will be missed, and I ask for a moment of silence in his memory. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Jernigan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I have a constituent in the gallery today, Mr. Tim Jester. He's visiting. I wish you all would welcome him.
Representative Thompson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to welcome my intern, Miss Adasia Shannon, who is from over on my right, who is a student at Tennessee State and from Madison, Wisconsin. Thank you.
Chairman Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I rise tonight to honor a gentleman who we lost suddenly, who was very influential and impactful in Metro Nashville and Davidson County. His name was John Harkey. John Harkey was a two-time recipient of the Kibbe Clayton Lifetime Achievement Award for Walk Bike Nashville. He's one of these individuals with whom you all would have gotten along. He really practiced what he preached. He talked about the need to have multiple modes of transportation, public transportation, and even encourage cycling and pedestrian safety. And even at his advanced age, I don't think I ever saw him moving anywhere when he wasn't on a bicycle. And it was pretty remarkable to see someone so committed, so dedicated to their purpose in retirement.
Moment of silence, please. Thank you. Representative Hazelwood.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I too rise to honor someone who is no longer with us, Captain Larry Taylor, a constituent of mine who passed away on Sunday. Captain Taylor was the latest Medal of Honor winner. He was recognized in September with that high honor for just amazing things that he did during the Vietnam War. It took us a while to get that recognition in place, but he flew a Cobra helicopter and he rescued a team that was in the middle of a firefight, and he did it against orders. He did it in a way that now they practice as tactics. Those team members were able to hang on to the helicopter skids, and he took them out of a really dangerous situation. They were all saved. He did, came back to his community, lived on Signal Mountain, and contributed. So I would just ask that we just recognize Captain Taylor, remember his family, and remember his sacrifice.
Thank you. Representative Carringer.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I also rise to honor a very, very special lady in Knox County, Frances Cabe Hancock. She was a very good friend of my mother's before I was born, and they remained best friends. And one of her sons, who's a doctor in Knoxville, we grew up to be friends, and she was a lifelong Knox County Republican to our Knox County Republican Party. She was a precinct captain and worked in the elections and is going to be definitely missed in Knox County and as a role model for me. She leaves two sons, Mark and David Hancock, and a daughter-in-law and several grandchildren. So
A moment of silence. Thank you. Thank you. Representative Mitchell.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Yeah, I'd like to welcome here tonight. I've got a page, Mr. Jay Call. He's a junior at MLK Magnet School here in Nashville. I appreciate him coming out tonight and working with us. Thank you.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, my pastor, Reverend Sammy Holloway, he's been up here. He's prayed for us before. And he is, it may not seem like it sometimes, but he is the most influential male figure in my life. This weekend, he received the title of apostle. And so if you will, please give him a round of applause, because I don't know any person that deserves that better than Dr. Sammy Holloway. Thank you.
Representative Reagan.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'd like to welcome and recognize my intern, Mr. Chris Coffey, a student at Lee University. Thank you. Please give him a welcome.
Representative Pearson.
Thank you, Speaker. I'd like to welcome two folks who are here from Memphis and Shelby County, Jesse Husseth and Noah Nordstrom. So if we would make them feel welcome. And I want to recognize Reverend Dr. Gina Stewart, who this past week became the first woman ever to preach at the National Baptist Convention's Joint Executive Board session with an amazing word, amazing witness about all of our responsibility to truly live into our faith, using it toward liberation, toward justice, toward service for everyone in our communities. And so I'm just so proud and so grateful that she's from Memphis, that our families have been connected for a long time, and that she made history this past week. And as she said in one of her sermons, which I encourage all of us to listen to, is that we may all be more like Claudia. So if you would give her a round of applause.
Representative Fritz.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I would ask my colleagues to rise in honor of 3 U.S. troopers that lost their lives in service to the nation. Let us remember Sergeant Rivers, Specialist Saunders, and Specialist Moffitt. Today, their families grieve. We grieve with them. And would ask you to also remember the other 25 soldiers who were wounded in that attack in a moment of silence. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. This past Saturday, about 3 o'clock in the afternoon, I got a phone call from some constituents around Frillfoot Lake, and the water had been rising from the rain that we had. And the water was going in houses and around air conditioners. So I reached out to TEMA and Patrick, and he sent me the right number, and I called over to Mac over in West Tennessee. Within 3 hours, they had sandbags and sand right there taking care of the problem. So I just want to give a big shout out to TEMA and their efforts.
Representative Sapicki, I saw your hand earlier. Were you want to be recognized, Representative Sapicki? No. All right. Anyone else? Welcome and honoring. Next order, Mr. Clark.
Introduction to resolutions.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all resolutions properly filed be introduced pursuant to Rule number 17 and placed on the consent calendar, refer to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clark.
City Joint Resolutions Congratulatory Memorializing.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all Senate joint resolutions congratulatory memorialized and honor that has to be placed on the consent calendar pursuant to Rule number 17.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clark.
Resolutions lying over.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That all resolutions lying over be referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clark.
Introduction of bills.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That House Bills 2,128 through 2,238 be introduced and passed on first consideration.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Senate bills on first consideration, Senate bills on second consideration, House bills on second consideration.
Lear Lamberth, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. That House Bills 2041 through 2,127 be passed on second consideration and be held on the desk, referred to the appropriate standing committee.
Without objection, so ordered. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Petitions and memorials, reports from standing committees, reports from select committees, calendars. Mr. Speaker, the House has a consent calendar.
Chairman Zachary, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move passage of the consent calendar on third and final consideration, keeping with Rule 50.
Gentleman moves passage of the consent calendar, properly seconded. Mr. Clerk, any objections been filed?
Mr. Speaker, item 2, House Joint Resolution 800, House Joint Resolution 800 has been objected to by Leader Lamberth.
Anyone seeking recognition on the consent calendar? Seeing none, we are voting on the consent calendar. All members in favor vote aye when the bell rings. Those opposed vote no. Has every member voted? Does any member wish to change their vote? Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Ayes 91, no nays, 3 present, I voted.
Having received the constitutional majority, I declare the consent calendar passed without objection. Most reconsider table and let the journal reflect. Representatives Holtzclaw and Powell are excused. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Unfinished business.
Unfinished business. Representative Lynn, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1627 from the committee and the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Representative Reagan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1854 and House Bill 1840 from the committee and the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Representative Carr, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1982 from the committee and the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Representative Jernigan, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1833 from the committee in the House.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Representative Bain, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move to withdraw House Bill 1951 from the committee in the House. Thank you.
You've heard the motion. Any objections? Without objection, so ordered. Leader Lambert.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I make a motion to return or to refer HJR 800 to calendar and rules.
You heard the motion. Any objection? All right, we're on the board. Parliamentary question, you got to come up to the front, Representative. We'll explain it, but we have a parliamentary question. Mr. Clerk.
Mr. Speaker, the parliamentary inquiry was whether a member could bump every item on the consent calendar, and the answer is yes.
All right, so there was objection to the re-refer House Joint Resolution 800 to the Committee of Calendar and Rules, so we're on the board. A yes vote, an aye vote means to re-refer, a no vote means not to re-refer. All right, all those to vote. Mr. Clerk, take the vote. Mr. Clerk, please take the vote.
Aye, 71, 20 days.
House Joint Resolution 800 is referred to Calendar and Rules. Next order, Mr. Clerk.
Announcements.
Announcements. We're under announcements. Representative Parkinson. Oh,
Mr. Speaker, I had raised my hand under unfinished business because I needed to withdraw some bills. I thought you had acknowledged me.
I didn't see you, and you weren't on the list of the clerk already telling us what was going to be that. We can get that Wednesday if you need to. Representative Parkinson.
I just want to make sure it's not after bill filing deadline, so that's not bill filing deadline then, right?
Mr. Clerk, you want to tell them what time bill filing deadline is under announcements, since we're here?
Mr. Speaker, the bill filing deadline is the close of business Wednesday. The close of business Wednesday. There will be session prior to that at 9 a.m. on Wednesday.
All right, announcements. Representative Clemens.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Just to remind Democratic Caucus members, we'll be having a caucus gathering in the caucus office in Suite 662 of the Cordell Hall building after session. Thank you.
Representative Parkinson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Now, I know y'all don't know what I'm about to talk about, but did you know that we have been doing ties for turns for 10 years now? 10 years. Thank you, Representative, for that clap start that didn't start. 10 years we've been giving ties to interns in this body. It started right here in this body. Some of those interns now are in their early 30s and are working amongst us and working in other professions. Ties for Turns has been good for our interns. Let me thank each and every one of you that have contributed ties to Ties for Turns and those that are still contributing. We have a huge harvest of ties, shoes, suits, shirts, and more for our interns. So again, I want to thank you. 10 years in, y'all. 10 years. Let's do it another 10 years. Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Thank you, members.
Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I just want to remind everyone to be careful with TDOT when they're out patching the roads. This past Friday, TDOT was over on Highway 51 between New Bern and Dyersburg, and a man was he dropped his vape, and he reached down to get his vape, and he ran over a TDOT truck. Both people are safe, and but it's just that really could have been a tragedy. So just encourage you to be aware.
Representative Rudd.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm announcing that the Campaigns and Election Finance Committee will be meeting this Wednesday in House Hearing Room 2 at 12 noon. Thank you.
Chairman Faison.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Members, the Tennessee Public Television Council is now going to meet in the Legislative Lounge on the second floor, right over here across the hall from the Senate chamber, Wednesday morning for donuts and coffee, 8:30 to 10. And if you appreciate PBS and what they do, make sure you go in there and tell them, hey, Wednesday morning. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
Any further announcements? Next order, Mr. Clark.
Roll call.
Roll call. Mr. Clerk, please take the roll.
Mr. Speaker, 95 members present.
Next order, Mr. Clerk.
That completes the regular order, Mr. Speaker.
Leader Cochran, you're recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I move the House stand in recess until 9 a.m. on Wednesday, January 31st, 2024.
Without objection, the House stands in recess till 9 a.m. on Wednesday, January 31st, 2024.